Good afternoon, everybody. It's 12 o'clock. I'm going to give it just a couple of minutes for any late attendees to join. I can see the numbers are starting to creep up in the corner of the screen with people joining as we speak. So in the meantime, if those of you who have joined could please confirm that you can hear me. Could you please like the comment in the Q&A box on the right hand side? If you can hear me, can you please like that comment, as garbled, apologies as that comment is. Just know then that I'm not talking to myself. Thank you very much to that person. So while we wait for a couple more people to join us, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Gemma Kello. I'm the Communications Manager for Brum Breathes, leading on to stakeholder engagement. I'm joined by my colleague Peter Edwards, who's the Principal Clean Air Zone Officer, leading on exemptions. This is being recorded. So after today's webinar, we will send you a link to the recording. If you find it helpful today, please share that link with family, friends, colleagues, etc. Help us get the message out about the clean air. So I'll give 1 more minute and then we will start the presentation. I should also add that Peter and I are both working from home, so I apologise for any background noise and pets or children. We've done all we can to try and minimise any disruption. Okay, so without further ado, we'll get underway. If you have any questions, by the way, during the course of the presentation, if you could please pop them in the chat box on the right hand side. Once we finish talking to you about how the zone will operate and the support that's available, we will answer any questions that you may still have that weren't covered off in the presentation. So Birmingham's Clean Air Zone is being introduced because poor air quality has been declared a national health emergency. Every year, between 28 and 36,000 people across the UK are dying from conditions which are exacerbated by poor air quality, including cancer, heart disease and lung disease. Of those numbers, up to 900 people in Birmingham alone are dying from those conditions because air quality is so bad in the city. I won't run through all the figures on screen for you, but I do think it's important to point out that children are adversely affected because they are smaller and closer to the ground and closer to those concentrated exhaust fumes. They inhale 3 times as much air pollution than we do as adults, and that impacts on their growth and their development, and they are therefore 4 times more likely to have reduced lung function than when they become adults.
Gemma, just to interrupt, sorry Gemma, the presentation hasn't gone full screen and isn't moving across, so we're still on the first slide and we can see your PowerPoint. It's not in slideshow mode.
Is that showing okay now, Peter?
Yes, now, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll with that. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying I'm going back on mute. I'll leave you to it.
Thank you. So yes, apologies for that. So those are some of the figures on screen there that talk about how air pollution is impacting on our health and well-being. The vulnerable and most deprived are more likely to suffer. People who live closer to roads are more likely to suffer from air pollution. So with that in mind, there is a public health emergency and we have to deliver the clean air zone to improve air quality levels in Birmingham city centre. So hopefully the slides are moving forward now. I'll trust Peter to interrupt if not. So prior to COVID, we undertook some research in Birmingham city centre and we ascertained that 50% of all journeys into Birmingham were undertaken by private car. Of those journeys, 250,000 of them every single day were for less than 1 mile. So we're talking about a 20-minute walk, a 10-minute cycle ride, etc. So what the Clean Air Zone is looking to do in the first instance is to deter high polluting vehicles from driving through the city centre. But secondly, get people who are driving those particularly short journeys to reconsider their travel behaviour. So for journeys that are for less than 1 mile, can they be walked or cycled or undertaken by public transport, further reducing the number of vehicles on the road, reducing congestion levels and subsequently improving air quality even further. So Birmingham's Clean Air Zone will go live on the 1st of June this year. It's been delayed from January 2020 due to issues with the government vehicle checker and from summer 2020 as a result of COVID-19. So we are now launching on the 1st of June this year. It's important to note the clean air zone is not the same as a congestion charge. So in London, where there is a congestion charge, every single vehicle is charged to drive through a designated area. In Birmingham, it will only be the most high polluting vehicles that are subject to the daily charge, and we estimate that will impact on about 1 in 4 vehicles. So clean air zones will be introduced across the country in response to air pollution being a national health emergency. Bath was the first city outside of London to go live. They launched in March with a Category C clean air zone. In Birmingham, we are launching a Category D on the 1st of June. Each local authority will set the parameters and the charging category for their zone. So in Birmingham, where we're a Category D, we will charge all high polluting vehicles, including private cars. In Bath, where it's Category C, private vehicles are not included, which is why you may find that you're subject to a charge in Birmingham, but not in Bath. So come the 1st of June, if your vehicle meets the compliance standards, you do not need to take any action. But if your vehicle does not meet the emission standards, then buses, taxis, vans, lorries and cars will be expected to pay the day. So the clean air zone is the blue area that you can see on screen, everywhere A4540 Middleway, but not the Middleway itself. So as I said, come the 1st of June, compliant vehicles can continue to drive through the city centre as you would now. You do not need to take any action. If your vehicle does not meet the emission standards, come the 1st of June, you can drive around the A4540 Middleway, that's fine. But when you enter the blue area and enter the clean air zone, you will be subject to a daily charge. That charge is £8 a day for cars, taxis and vans, and £50 a day for HGVs, coaches and buses. A day is midnight to midnight, not 24 hours from when you enter the zone. But during that midnight to midnight time frame, you can enter and leave the zone as many times as you'd like for a single charge. However, if you drive in at say 10 p.m, leave at 3 a.m, you cross that midnight threshold, you would be subject to 2 charges. You will need to make payment 6 days prior to the day of your visit, the day of your visit, or 6 days after. So that's a 13-day payment window. If you do not pay within those 13 days, you will be subject to a fixed penalty notice of £120. That's reduced to £60 if paid within 14 days. We have installed over 300 signs on the boundary and the approach to the zone warning that you're entering and approaching a chargeable area, but that is the only notification that you will get. It's the same system as London, so you are expected to know if your vehicle is subject to the charge, and if so, you need to know that you've entered and to make payment within that 13-day window. The onus and responsibility sits with the driver, so you need to make sure you've checked whether you're subject to the charge, and if so, when you enter the zone, you need to make payment within that window. So the big question is, what is a compliant vehicle and will I be charged? So on screen here are the emission standards that you need to meet to not be subject to a charge. This information will be in your V5C logbook. The easiest thing to do, however, is to go on to the BRUM site. There'll be a link to that at the end of this presentation. We can click onto the government vehicle checker, input your registration details, and it will tell you whether or not you're subject to that charge. What we're looking for though is for petrol vehicles to be a Euro 4 standard or better. Diesel vehicle Euro 6 standard, just electric, fully hydrogen fuel cell, or a hybrid electric with diesel and Euro 6 standards I talked about earlier. To put it into context, and this is only a guidance, this is, I've got to stress, it is the emission standard, not the year that we're looking for. Most Euro 4 petrol vehicles came into circulation from 2006 onwards. Most diesel vehicles were Euro 6 standard from September 2015 onwards. So the easiest thing to do, go onto the Brumbury's website, click on the link to the government vehicle checker, enter your registration details, and it will tell you whether or not you need to take any action ahead of the zone launching on the 1st of June. So contrary to media reports, the Clean Air Zone is not intended to be a money-making scheme for the council. If we make no money from this project, then that's great news, because our objective is to tackle air pollution levels. And so if we raise no money, it means there are no high polluting vehicles passing through the city centre, and therefore air quality improve. However, we do understand that particularly in the early days, we will make money from this project. So we have to reinvest that money in transport related projects and policies. It cannot be used to support the council's general budget and fund services such as bin collections. So some of the schemes that have been identified to date are introducing controlled parking zones on the boundary of the A4540 Middleway. That's to protect residents and to stop people basically abandoning their cars on the boundary of the zone and walking in, causing problems for people who live in those areas. We're funding a hydrogen bus scheme for 20 buses that will come into effect later this year. And we'll also be investing in improving city centre pedestrianisation and active travel routes. That's to make walking and cycling safer and more appealing to do so, particularly with regard to those 1 mile journeys I referenced earlier. If we want people to walk and cycle more, then we need to make sure it's safe and appealing for them to do so. So on the next slides, Peter's going to talk through some of the support that's available, particularly to people living in the zone. And then if you have any questions at the end, we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Gemma. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we had a bit of interference there with Gemma's line, so I hope it was just Gemma's internet and it's not an issue with me as well. So apologies if it gets a little bit garbled at times like it just did, but hopefully the information is in the slides, and then if anything we didn't get picked up, you can ask in the Q&A box. So my name is Peter Edwards. I'm Principal Clean Air Zone Officer responsible for the delivery of all of the exemptions within the Clean Air Zone and some of the financial incentive packages as well. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, and given the nature, the name and the audience of the webinar, I'm going to focus primarily on residents. So I think before we talk about the exemptions, we need to talk about where these exemptions came from. So when we did a consultation in 2018, that consultation was not shall we do a clean air zone. It was we had to do a clean air zone. We've got a public health emergency in the city and the government mandated us to do it. It was how should we do it, who should be charged, and who should get the most support, because who's going to be the most impacted. And off the back of that, and there was 11,000 responses to that consultation, the biggest response any consultation Birmingham City Council has ever had. These exemptions were devised, and this is what is now kind of legally bound to be delivered. So most importantly for the people on this call, if you live in the clean air zone and you drive a non-compliant vehicle, you can apply to us and you can have a 2-year exemption from clean air zone charging. It is really important to emphasize that will not happen automatically. We need you to come to us and to apply for it and to show us the evidence that you are in fact eligible. You can apply on our website, but until we tell you that you have been approved and that your registration is going to be added on the list, you are not exempt. So please don't think, well I have a non-compliant vehicle, I live here, I am exempt. You have to come and show that to us and apply. And on the next slide, I'll show you a bit more detail about what we require. But the application process is open now, and it's pretty simple for you. For residents, it is the simplest process. You just need to show us that you live in the zone and that you are the registered keeper of a non-compliant vehicle, and that vehicle needs to be registered in the zone. So if the vehicle is registered, I don't know, at your parents' address or in your partner's name, and you're the person making the application, that is not going to meet the eligibility criteria. The V5 document, the logbook document, needs to say Peter Edwards, who lives at this address in the clean air zone, wherever that may be. There are other exemptions available. I'm not going to spend quite as much time because you're most likely residents, but there is also an exemption for people who work in the zone and earn less than £30,000 a year. So if you have friends, family, colleagues who work in the zone, please tell them to apply for that. That's a 1-year exemption. Similarly, if they are operating a business in the zone, and they operate commercial vehicles, they're fleet vehicles, then they can register for an exemption for those non-compliant vehicles also. Finally, there is a children's hospital and 2 medical centres that offer out of hours or emergency services within the zone. The medical centres are Badger in Digbeth and Atwood Green, which is on Bath Row. These centres, if you visit those centres in a non-compliant vehicle to go to an appointment or to drop someone at an appointment, then you can access an exemption via a voucher code. So you would go to the reception desk and they would give you a little voucher and then you would credit that online. So those exemptions are the main exemptions. On the next slide, please, Gemma. Yeah, so this is the slide I was talking about, just in terms of a bit more detail and what we need from you if you're a resident and what you need to submit. As I've already said, it's not automatic. The exemptions run from the 1st of June 2021, not from when you apply. So obviously it's in your interest to apply now. We've only got 5-6 weeks until the zone goes live. If you think you're eligible, or your neighbours or anyone, please encourage them to apply as soon as possible. If you apply on the 28th of May, when we're going live on the 1st of June, we cannot guarantee to you that we will have the capacity to process that in time. What we have said, and I'll repeat here, is that applications after the 10th of May, we cannot guarantee that we will process them in time. We will be working as hard as we can to make sure that we do, but we cannot guarantee it because we're expecting to get hundreds, if not thousands, of these applications over the next 5 or 6 weeks. I think what's really important to say as well is that you only need an exemption if your vehicle is non-compliant. So check your vehicle on the vehicle checker that we've already talked about, is on the front page of our website. If that tells you that there's zero charge in Birmingham, then please don't apply for exemption. You don't need one. There's no further action for you to take, like Gemma said. Also important to note that you will have to, it is a 2-year exemption, but you will have to renew after the first year, and we will obviously contact everyone in 2022 about that. But we're focusing right now on the priority of getting everyone on the list for the first year. So what do we need from you? We need to see your vehicle logbook, and as I said before, it needs to have your name on it and it needs to be registered in the Clean Air Zone. And then we need to see something that proves that you live in the Clean Air Zone, and that's all detailed on the screen. I won't go into too much detail on that. Fairly standard bits of ID and stuff that you would expect to be able to prove where you live. So I hope that's all clear. The link is on the front page of the website, full terms and conditions, etc. There's also a guidance document which shows you step by step how to complete your application, but we've designed it in such a way that we hope it's pretty straightforward. You can upload. You don't have to have a scanner. You can upload a picture of your V5. You can take a picture on your smartphone and take a picture of all your documents and just upload JPEG. That's fine. And all that stuff is detailed on the website as well. Next slide, please, Gemma. So in addition to all those kind of the ones that we expect to get big numbers for, people working and living in the zone especially, there's also some other exemptions. So I'll just run through those quickly. So it's important first of all to say that if you have a blue badge, a disabled blue badge, then you are not automatically exempt, or you're not exempt. What is exempt is if you have a disabled passenger tax classification for your vehicle. So this is a DVLA national classification and is on your logbook. And you can get this if you're in receipt of higher rates of disability benefits such as DLA and PIP. There is information about that on our website. If you have that classification, or if any of your friends' family have it, then it also is important to note that that's a national exemption. So that person could drive to Bath, to London, to Birmingham once our zone goes live and not be charged in their non-compliant vehicle. So it's worth checking that out. Motorcycles are exempt. And then we're into kind of more specialist vehicles. So showman's vehicles are kind of big specialist vehicles that can't be replaced or retrofitted easily. Ambulances, gritters, cranes, those sorts of things, probably not relevant to most people on this call. Historic vehicles is again another national classification. That's vehicles that are only over 40 years old, and that's listed on your logbook. And then finally, community and school transport, so things like school buses, ring and ride services, where it's kind of not-for-profit transport, they can also have an exemption. So that covers all of the exemptions off. Next slide, please, Gemma. The next slide is about financial incentives. Now, there aren't financial incentives available for residents. The support is that you have a 2-year exemption rather than a 1-year exemption. So I won't spend too much time on this, but there's £10 million available to people who work in the clean air zone in the form of a scrappage scheme, which will enable people to scrap their non-compliant vehicles in exchange for £2,000, either towards the price of a new compliant vehicle or a Swift card, a mobility credit on a Swift card to be used on the Transport for West Midlands public transport network. That scheme will go live in May. So if you have friends, family, people who work in the zone, please tell them about that. There's lots of information on our website. They can sign up to be made aware as soon as we go live with that. Also have £10 million for businesses who operate HGVs and coaches. That's open for applications at the moment, and a large pot of funding available for Birmingham licensed Hackney carriage and private hire drivers. So if you're getting in any cabs at the moment, as the city starts to reopen, please tell them that if their vehicle's non-compliant, that they can come and apply to us for support in upgrading those vehicles. We've already given out best part of £1.4 million to over 800 drivers in grant funding who are now driving less polluting, cleaner vehicles. So you can see the impact that the clean air zone is having even before the zone has actually gone live. Next slide, please, Gemma. So be pleased to know there's only 2 slides left, I think, and then we'll take any questions that you may have. But I think it's really important to kind of round off the presentation by putting this into kind of a bit of wider context. So Birmingham has a transport plan. Birmingham has a kind of route to zero carbon plan, and the clean air zone is just one element of it. It's a big element of it. It's probably the most famous, notorious, some people might say at the moment. But it's only part of the plan, and this transport plan, which is available for you to look at online, and you can also comment on lots of the schemes that are in kind of have been put in or are being proposed at the moment. And it has 4 main big moves or visions, and the first one is to try and reallocate road space away from the private motor vehicle and to give more space to people walking, cycling and using public transport. So that's in the form of cycle lanes, bus priority, widening of pavements, making it easier for people to walk in their local neighbourhoods and the city centre. The next one is to transform the city centre. Gemma's already touched on some of this in terms of pedestrianisation. I haven't been into the city centre, like many people probably haven't, for a while, but I understand that large parts are being ripped up and made nicer for people to walk around the kind of Colmore Row, around the town hall sort of area, but also to improve access for public transport, and in this case buses, across the city centre, so that buses can move freely across the city centre, but perhaps private motor vehicles can't because they're the ones causing the congestion. The next one is to try and prioritise active travel in local neighbourhoods. So everything else we've talked about has kind of been clean air zone, city centre focus, but actually there are moves to try and make it easier for people to walk and cycle those short journeys Gemma talked about in their local neighbourhoods. So things called low traffic neighbourhoods have been introduced across the city, where it restricts the movement of through traffic and makes it more pleasant and easier for people to walk and cycle. And then you're looking at things like high street pavement widening on a number of high streets. They've done it on my local high street, and that was in response to COVID, but has actually made it a nicer space because you've not got idling cars next to you and the traffic flows slightly better. And then finally, managing demand by parking, so removing all the free on-street parking within the city centre that Birmingham City Council has control over, removing some parking entirely or making it chargeable, giving that space over to bus lanes, etc., and trying to rebalance, make it more attractive to walk, cycle or use public transport, because a lot of what has been done over the last 30 years is very much focused on the private motor vehicle, and unfortunately that's not sustainable, as you can see from the issues we have around air quality, etc., in the city. Next slide and final slide, please, Gemma. And this next slide is just to finish off. I've already talked about the carbon, the route to zero carbon by 2030. Birmingham City Council has announced that ambitious target, but we're very much aware that we can't do that on our own. The Clean Air Zone team certainly can't do it on our own. We can improve air quality, but we need the assistance of residents, of businesses, of communities across the city to try and act and respond to the climate emergency. The way we're going at the moment, doing nothing is not sustainable for air quality or for the climate emergency. So this is bigger than the Clean Air Zone. And then we've already talked about some of these schemes in terms of hydrogen buses, and there's a massive expansion of the city's electric vehicle charging points going in at the moment. And there's also a move to try and help Hackney carriage drivers, because we know it's very easy, well, not very, it's easier for a private hire driver to get a compliant vehicle, but it's not so easy for a Hackney carriage driver. With the electric cabs are very expensive and difficult for them to buy. So there's lots of other supplementary supporting schemes across the city trying to support moves for a cleaner and greener city. So that concludes our presentation. The last slide is simply just a bit of contact details. So obviously there's Q&A now. Hopefully we've answered lots of your queries through the presentation. If we haven't, you will probably find the answers on our website, brumbreeds.co.uk. And then if you still can't find the answer, or if you've got something quite very specific, then you can email us, cleanair@birmingham.gov.uk. So I shall just open up the Q&A, see if there's anything that's been put through. I can't see anything at the moment as yet, but what I would do, because I've been talking a lot this morning, is just put myself on mute, have a glass of water, and then just wait for any questions to come through. And if they don't come through, hopefully that means that we've provided all the answers you needed. But if you do think of some questions after we've ended the call, then absolutely email us. And Gemma will of course be sending the recording round and a variety of links. So we would really appreciate you sharing all that information and this recording with friends and family, because in the current environment we can't go out and do big face-to-face events. So yeah, we appreciate your help in kind of spreading the message, because it's not long now till the Clean Air Zone goes live. Okay, well, Gemma's put some kind of pointers of action in the QA, but we haven't actually had any questions come through. So I'll take that as the fact that we've delivered a very informative presentation. So all that remains really is to, thank you very much for taking time out of your day. I hope that you have found the presentation useful. As I say, please go to our website. Please check your vehicle. And please, if you have a non-compliant result and that you will be charged, please apply if you think you're going to be eligible. And finally, as I keep repeating, and I know I'm repeating myself, please share this information with friends, family, colleagues, etc. But as it looks like there's no further questions, then we will end the call, and thank you once again for your attendance. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.